She walked into the room, and no one expected it. Not here, not in this place where legends were supposed to speak, not women. The rain hammered against the glass of Fort Bragg's training facility. Lightning cracked, throwing jagged shadows across the walls. 30 elite operators sat in silence, their bodies rigid, their eyes sharp. They had been told a legend would speak to them tonight, a legend who had done the impossible. Colonel James Mitchell stood at the front, his weathered face lined by 4 decades of war. His voice carried that gravel tone that made men straighten in their seats. 2 years ago, he said, pausing as thunder rolled, 8 Navy SEALs should have died in Ravinia, surrounded, outnumbered 3-1. No air support, no extraction. By every tactical measure, they were already dead. The room held its breath. They didn't die, Mitchell continued, because of one shooter, one ghost in the trees who refused to let warriors fall on her watch. A scoff broke the tension. One of the younger men, broad shoulders, arms crossed, let out a chuckle. Sir, with respect, we've all heard the story. Female sniper, single-handed rescue, sounds like propaganda, a myth to keep morale high. Several others smirked. Mitchell's eyes hardened. Son, I don't deal in fairy tales. His voice dropped, cold, factual. 15 confirmed kills through heavy foliage, ranges between 350 and 450 meters. Constant movement. Average time between shots, 18 seconds. Every SEAL survived, despite multiple wounded. That isn't propaganda, that's fact. The room fell silent again. And then, with deliberate motion, Mitchell stepped to the door and opened it. Gentlemen, you don't have to take my word for it, she's here. She entered quietly. Average height, dark hair pulled back in regulation bun. No bulky physique, no swagger. At first glance, unremarkable, ordinary. Then she lifted her eyes. Every man in that room felt it. Dark, penetrating, the eyes of a predator. This is Captain Alexandra Winters, Mitchell said. Call sign Ghost. The whispers began. The myth was standing before them. Alex didn't flinch. She stepped forward with calm, fluid movements, precise, efficient. When she spoke, her voice carried clean to every corner of the room. Before I tell you what happened in Ravinia, she said, you need to understand how I got there. The rain outside seemed to pause. The silence inside deepened. Fort Obsidian, Nevada. 48 hours before Ravinia. The briefing room hummed with cold air as desert heat pressed against the walls. 8 SEALs studied maps, their commander at the head of the table. Jack Hawkins, decorated, respected, feared. Our mission is simple, Hawkins told them, pointing to the satellite images. Ravinia Valley, it's a supply route. We infiltrate, gather intel, and extract. No contact unless absolutely necessary. The word shadow rippled through the room. Omar Al-Farsai, former MSAD agent turned ghost terrorist. For years, he had stayed ahead of the most sophisticated manhunt in history. Somehow, he always knew their moves before they made them. The men leaned closer, tension thickening. The door opened. Operations Officer Carter entered. He was older, analytical, the kind of man who had seen more wars than he'd fought. Extraction and comms are set. Overwatch has been assigned. Hawkins nodded. Henderson. Unavailable, Carter replied evenly. You'll have Sergeant Winters. The name dropped like a stone into water. Hawkins' jaw tensed. Winters, the girl from the armory. Staff Sergeant Alexandra Winters, Carter corrected. No, Hawkins shook his head. This is Tier 1. I need someone I can trust, not a trial run. Carter's eyes narrowed. She's logged 200 combat missions, 43 confirmed kills, highest marksmanship scores at Fort Benning in 15 years. Numbers on paper, Hawkins muttered. What happens when the shooting starts and she freezes? Neither man noticed the door left slightly ajar. Neither noticed her standing there, silent, hearing every word. She absorbed it without a flicker on her face. At 26, Alex had long since built a skin thick enough for dismissals like this. Her frame was lean, her movements restrained, coiled. "This isn't politics, Commander," Carter pressed. "It's capability. Winters is the best available." Hawkins ground his teeth. "Fine, but it's on record. My men's lives are at stake." At last Carter turned. "Sergeant Winters, please join us." She stepped in, professional, neutral. "Sir." Hawkins looked at her like she was a burden to carry. "Just stay out of our way," he muttered. "Be ready if we need you." She said nothing, picked up a terrain map, memorized every ridge, every contour, every potential line of sight. Words didn't change minds, results did. That night she walked across the base alone, the desert stars sharp and cold above. In the armory, Ramirez was waiting. Old, scarred, respectful. He slid her rifle case across the table. "All prepped, gas system cleaned." She opened the case. The M110 semi-automatic sniper system lay inside. She knew it like a reflection. Her hands moved across it with reverent precision. "People talking?" Ramirez asked. "People always talk." Hawkins has a reputation, Syria. He lost 3 men, said a female officer froze when things went bad. Alex's hands paused on the rifle. "I didn't know that." "His best friend died in his arms," Ramirez said softly. "Collins, that's why he looks at you the way he does." She nodded once, absorbing the weight, then kept working. "Most snipers I know," Ramirez continued, "they keep lucky charms, superstitions. You do." For the first time, Alex allowed herself a thin smile. "I don't need luck, Sergeant. I need physics, distance, wind, bullet drop. They're just math problems. Solve them correctly and you don't need luck." Wyoming, years earlier. 11-year-old Alex held a rifle under her father's patient hand. Michael Winters, former SEAL sniper, quiet, broken in ways he never explained. Breathe in, then out, fire between heartbeats. The shot cracked. The paper target split dead center. "Good," her father said. "Now what else did you see?" "The target." "No," his voice softened but his eyes were sharp. "Look again." She scanned through the scope, the forest, the brush. Then her breath caught. The deer, a buck, 100 yards past the target. He smiled. "That's the difference. A shooter sees the target, a hunter sees everything." Those words carved themselves into her. A truth that would carry her through war, through the silence of her scope, through the impossible choice of Ravinia. Her father tapped her temple. "This is the weapon that matters." He didn't say it then, but she would understand later. He was preparing her for a world that would tear at her, test her, break her down. Years later, the house was too quiet. 16-year-old Alex stepped inside. Her father's truck in the driveway, but no sound, no movement, just a silence that felt heavier than stone. She found him in his study, the pistol at his side, the blood on the wall. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. Instead, her mind fell into that cold, detached clarity he had taught her. Assessment, not reaction. The police whispered about how composed she was. They didn't see her later, clutching his photograph, breaking apart in sobs that clawed out from a place too deep to name. On the desk, a letter waited, his handwriting. "Alex, I'm sorry, the ghosts finally won." The rest was confession and legacy, his nightmares, his failures, but also his faith in her, his notebook, every lesson, every calculation, every secret he had learned as a sniper. "You have a gift," he wrote. "Trust your instincts, see what's really there, not what you expect to see." At 16, with her world shattered, she made a choice. She would not waste what he gave her. 2 years later, she enlisted. Back in Fort Bragg, the operators leaned forward in their seats. They weren't smirking anymore. Alex's eyes swept the room, calm, controlled. "Before Ravinia," she said, "I thought being the best was enough. I thought numbers on a score sheet could silence doubt. I thought skill would speak louder than bias." Her voice lowered. But skill isn't enough, because the battlefield isn't just terrain and targets. It's the silence before a storm, the moment when no one believes you, and the choice you make when you're the only one who sees what's coming. The room was still. They wanted her to continue. They needed her to. But she stopped there, letting the silence hang. Because sometimes silence tells its own story. And in that silence, every man felt it, the gravity of what she carried, the ghosts in her past, the ghosts in her scope, the ghosts she had outwitted in a forest where death had been certain. Her story wasn't over, not yet. But when she finally began to tell it, they would understand. Not propaganda, not myth, but fact. The story of the ghost who saved them. Why was the forest so still? Alex lay prone beneath the dense canopy, her ghillie suit threaded with branches and earth. She had been in position for nearly an hour, her scope cutting through the first gray light of dawn. The valley below stretched wide and quiet, shadows drifting as mist clung to the ground. Through her glass she watched SEAL Team 7 move in disciplined formation. Shadows moving through shadows, 8 men, hardened, confident, deadly. And yet something pressed against her chest, a pressure she couldn't name. The forest wasn't breathing right. Her radio hissed softly, Commander Hawkins' voice. "Ghost, this is 7 Actual, approaching waypoint Charlie. Any movement in your sector." She scanned slowly, her breathing measured. Nothing obvious. No muzzle glints. No human silhouettes. But she felt it, something her father had drilled into her. When the woods don't sing, beware. 7 Actual, hold position, she whispered. The bird patterns are disrupted. Segments of silence, pockets too clean, could indicate human presence. A pause, then Hawkins' curt reply. "Ghost, our thermals are clear, no visual on hostiles. What exactly are you seeing?" "Not seeing," she said, her voice steady. "Reading. The forest is telling us someone's here. Multiple positions, rough perimeter." Another pause, longer this time. "Ghost," Hawkins finally answered, irritation sharp in his tone. "We're trained to detect ambush, we're clear. Continue overwatch, we move." Static cracked and the line went dead. Alex exhaled slowly, fighting down frustration. She'd been dismissed before. She had been ignored before. And each time she had promised herself the same thing: let the work speak. Let the results silence doubt. But results would only matter if any of them lived long enough to see them. Through her scope, she tracked the team as they pushed deeper. She noted depressions in the brush, too uniform to be natural. Mist clinging oddly where heat should have thinned it. The faint shift of air that made the hair on her neck stand up. Her father's voice whispered in her head. "The forest speaks, Alex, listen." Her gut tightened. And then it happened. A deafening crack split the valley as an IED detonated. One of the SEALs was flung into the air like a rag doll. Gunfire erupted from all directions. Dozens of muzzle flashes stuttered through the trees. Shouts filled the comms. "Contact, contact, heavy fire, multiple shooters." Alex's heart hammered, but her breathing stayed slow, controlled. She pressed her cheek harder to the stock. Hawkins' voice burst through. 7 Actual, requesting immediate air support. We're pinned, repeat, multiple hostiles surrounded. Command came back grim. Negative, weather has grounded air. QRF en route. ETA 45 minutes. 45 minutes. They didn't have 10. Alex's jaw clenched. She whispered into her mic, 7 Actual, this is Ghost. I'm engaging." Hawkins roared back, gunfire drowning his words. "Negative, Ghost, that's an order. You're 1 shooter against 30 plus. Stay in position until." Her voice cut clean through his. Calm, steady, absolute. "With respect, sir, you're about to die if someone doesn't act. I have the field, you don't. Trust me or don't. I'm engaging." She didn't wait for permission. Through her scope she caught her first target, an RPG gunner crouched against a tree, tube balanced on his shoulder, aiming toward the pinned SEALs. Range, 387 meters. Wind, 3 ms east. Slight downhill. She inhaled, held, released half a breath. Her world narrowed, trigger slack, press. The suppressed shot cracked quietly. The man's head snapped back. The RPG clattered uselessly to the ground. "One down," she whispered. She shifted immediately. A machine gunner was tearing into the SEAL's cover. Range, 412 meters, adjusted for wind. Another breath, another squeeze. The gunner collapsed. "Two." Her voice was calm, mechanical, but inside, something hot and electric coursed through her veins. Not adrenaline, not panic, focus. A razor's edge where nothing existed but math and inevitability. "Ghost, what the hell are you?" Hawkins' voice cracked mid-sentence. Then silence. Then "They're dropping. Jesus Christ, they're dropping." "Doing my job," Alex answered, already lining up her third shot. 3, 4, 5. Each target chosen not for convenience but necessity. Those who threatened the wounded first, those who held suppressive fire second, those trying to flank third. Confusion spread among the enemy. Men fell from nowhere, no muzzle flash, no thunderous report, just sudden, silent death. 6, 7, 8. "Ghost," Hawkins' tone had shifted, no longer angry, almost reverent. How many?" "Focus on extraction," she replied. "Let me work." 9, 10, 11. The enemy faltered, their perfect kill zone unraveling. They shouted to one another in panic, searching for a phantom they couldn't see. Alex shifted position, belly crawling silently through brush, resetting her angle before they could triangulate her. She aimed again. 12, 13. 7 actual, she called into the comm. "Your western flank is breaking. Push now. Cover fire. I'll keep them off you." "But we've got 3 wounded who can't move fast," Hawkins barked. "Then carry them," Alex said, tone flat. "On my mark, 30 seconds. There was silence, then his voice clipped but trusting. "Copy." She scanned quickly, calculations forming in her head. Distance, trajectory, priorities. 3, 2, 1, mark. The SEALs surged, dragging their wounded, firing in disciplined bursts. Alex's scope tracked each exposed enemy. 14, 15. The forest, once alive with enemy fire, began to collapse into chaos. Fighters broke ranks. Some fled outright. Others hesitated too long and vanished under her glass. "Ghost, enemy retreating west." "Maintain movement," she instructed calmly. "I'll cover you to extraction." Minutes stretched. She shifted hides twice more, her rifle whispering death whenever enemy squads tried to regroup. Each shot deliberate, each motion methodical. When at last the QRF arrived, the forest was littered with bodies. 30 had begun the ambush, barely half staggered away. And not a single SEAL was dead. The extraction zone was chaos. Medics worked on the wounded, rotors thundered overhead. Mud, blood, sweat, all of it mixing into the air. And then through the tree line she emerged, rifle slung across her back, mud smeared across her ghillie suit, her eyes the same unshaken calm they had been hours before. The SEALs turned. Hardened men who had scoffed at her name now stared in silence. Shock, awe, something closer to reverence. Hawkins limped toward her, his leg wrapped in a hasty bandage. His eyes met hers, and for the first time there was no dismissal, no doubt. Just shame and respect. "Staff Sergeant Winters," he said, voice low, almost raw. He struggled for words. "I owe you an apology, and I owe you my life, and theirs." She stood at attention despite the exhaustion in her bones. "Just doing my job, sir." He let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Your job? Do you know what you just did? 15 kills, alone, moving positions under fire, guiding our extraction while you tore apart a superior force. You didn't just do your job, you performed mastery." His voice hardened. "Before this mission, I told them you'd freeze when the shooting started. I told them you didn't belong. I was wrong." He turned to his team. "Listen to me. Prejudice can kill you. Judging skill by gender isn't just wrong, it's deadly. Staff Sergeant Winters didn't just belong, she saved us, all of us. Silence followed. Then Marcus Tank Thompson, his arm bandaged, stepped forward. 15 shots, 15 kills, that wasn't luck, that was something else. Alex allowed herself a faint, tired smile. It wasn't luck, sir, it was math and patience. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Hawkins extended his hand. From this day forward, if you'll accept it, I want you permanently assigned to Team 7. Her hand closed around his, firm, steady. I'd be honored. Later, as the helicopters lifted them skyward, the valley shrinking beneath, Alex tilted her face to the light. For the first time in years, the morning sun didn't feel like an indifferent witness. She whispered softly, so no one else could hear. I did it, Dad, just like you taught me. The rotors swallowed her words, but the mountains seemed to carry them anyway. Why were they all staring at her? The debriefing room at Forward Operating Base Obsidian buzzed with a strange electricity. Normally, post-mission reports were cold, clinical, dissected into data points and failures. But this time was different. Because 8 men had returned when none should have. Because of her. Alex sat alone at one end of the long table, back straight, uniform immaculate despite 2 sleepless nights. She felt every pair of eyes on her, from the younger officers' sneaking glances to the gray-haired colonels who rarely bothered with mission reviews. At the front, William Carter stood before the projection screen, his tone calm, measured, but tinged with awe he tried to hide. At 0627 hours, SEAL Team 7 was ambushed by approximately 30 hostile combatants. Team was surrounded, 3 wounded, odds overwhelming. Standard tactical assessment predicted annihilation within 10 minutes. He changed the display to thermal imagery captured late in the fight. Red signatures dotted the forest floor, still, lifeless. Staff Sergeant Winters, acting as overwatch, engaged independently. Over the course of 19 minutes, she eliminated 15 enemy combatants. 15 rounds fired. 15 confirmed kills. She shifted positions multiple times, avoided detection, and provided tactical guidance throughout extraction. Every SEAL survived. A low whistle escaped someone at the back. Carter ignored it. His gaze shifted toward Alex. These numbers are not just extraordinary, they are unprecedented, shooting through forest cover, at ranges between 350 and 450 meters, under shifting wind, while moving. Average time between confirmed kills, 76 seconds. Even hardened operators looked unsettled. They knew what those numbers meant. Across the table, Commander Hawkins shifted in his chair. His leg was wrapped, his face scarred with grime and exhaustion. The man who had once dismissed her now rose to speak. What the data doesn't show, Hawkins said, voice rough, is that Sergeant Winters warned us. She read the battlefield when all our sensors failed. Had we listened, casualties might have been avoided entirely. He paused, scanning the room. His voice dropped lower. And I wanted on record I objected to her assignment. Not because of her skill, because of her gender. I believed she would break under fire. I was wrong. That error almost cost American lives. The silence was thick. Such an admission was rare. It carried weight. Alex kept her face neutral, her hands folded neatly before her. But inside, something twisted. Vindication, yes, but not triumph. Never triumph. Because each compliment, each acknowledgement came wrapped in the memory of how close they had all been to death. After the session ended, she tried to slip quietly out, but a hand caught her shoulder. She turned. A tall figure studied her with sharp, deliberate eyes. Colonel Richard Foster, Deputy Commander of Special Operations Command. "Walk with me, Sergeant." It wasn't a request. They moved outside into the Nevada heat, the sun baking down on empty concrete. Foster kept his silence until they reached a quiet corner. "You've applied to the advanced sniper course 3 times. His voice was blunt. 3 times denied. Alex kept her tone steady. Yes, sir. Official reason was operational needs. And the unofficial? She hesitated only briefly. Concerns about whether a woman could handle the pressure, sir. Foster's jaw tightened. Marcus Harris, old school, good in his day, but stuck in the past. He stopped and turned to face her. What you did in Ravinia changes things. 15 for 15. That's more than numbers, that's history. Her eyes flickered down. I was just doing my job, sir. A faint smile crossed his lips. You keep saying that, but doing your job doesn't usually rewrite doctrine. He studied her closely. Your father was Michael Winters. Her shoulders stiffened. Yes, sir. I knew him, briefly. Afghanistan, 2004. He could see things the rest of us missed. Foster's voice softened for just a moment. Seems he passed it on. He handed her a folder. Your 4th application won't be necessary. You're going. Advanced sniper course. And not just as a student. Afterward, you'll instruct. Alex blinked. For once her composure cracked. Sir. The barriers are coming down, Winters, Foster said. Not all at once, but they are. And what you did in Ravinia is the wedge that forced them open. He turned, leaving her alone with the folder heavy in her hands. For years she had dreamed of that acceptance, of proving herself undeniable, and now it was real. But the weight of the paper in her grasp didn't feel like triumph. It felt like burden, like a responsibility she could never set down. Hundreds of miles away, another man studied reports with equal intensity. Omar Al-Farsi, the shadow, sat in a darkened room, his features carved by the glow of a single lamp. The messenger before him trembled. 15 men, the shadow repeated quietly. 15 of my best by a single shooter. Yes, sir. The shadow's knuckles whitened around the armrest of his chair. And this shooter was a woman. Yes, sir, Staff Sergeant Alexandra Winters, Army, 26. File is thin, most deployments classified, exceptional scores. The shadow rose, smooth and deliberate. He paced to the map pinned to the wall, tracing the lines of Ravinia with his finger. She saw what my men did not. She read the terrain when technology failed. His voice was low, almost admiring. That is not training alone. That is instinct, legacy. He turned back. Find everything on her, family, history, weaknesses, and watch her. I want her patterns, her vulnerabilities. She cost me years of preparation. She humiliated me. His tone sharpened. I don't want her simply dead. I want her to know she is prey before the end comes. The messenger nodded quickly and fled. Alone again, the shadow studied a photo newly pinned to his board. Alexandra Winters, dark eyes, calm, unreadable. So, he murmured, the daughter of Michael Winters, the ghost who once haunted me in Afghanistan has left behind another ghost, one that thinks she cannot be hunted. A thin smile curved his lips. Every ghost has an origin. Every ghost can be exorcised. 2 days later in Wyoming, Alex stood before her father's grave. The wind swept hard across the state veterans cemetery, bending the grass in waves. Snow lingered stubbornly on distant peaks. The headstone was simple. Michael James Winters, Chief Petty Officer, U.S. Navy SEAL, 1970 to 2013. She placed a small stone atop it, a ritual, one she had never abandoned. Kneeling, she pressed her hand against the cold granite. You were right, Dad, she whispered. Her voice was low, carried away by the wind. The forest speaks, you just have to listen. I listened, and I saved them. 15 shots, 15 kills, just like you taught me. 1 shot, 1 kill, no waste. Her throat tightened. She swallowed hard. They're sending me to the advanced course, the one they said I couldn't handle, and after that I'll be an instructor, teaching others what you taught me. She paused, her breath uneven. I wish you'd held on. I wish you could see it. Silence answered, only the wind across the plains. But as she rose, brushing the grass from her uniform, she felt something close, Not closure, not peace, but a circle half complete. Her father's lessons had not died with him. They had lived through her trigger, through her scope, through the lives she had saved. And now they would live through those she would teach. Back at Fort Benning weeks later, the advanced sniper course began. 24 candidates lined up at the range, all of them veterans, all of them men. They knew who she was. Ravinia had become a whisper that spread through special operations circles like fire through dry grass. Sergeant Major Marcus Hendricks, a grizzled man with a permanent scowl, walked the line. He stopped behind Alex. "I didn't want you here," he muttered low, so only she could hear. She kept her eyes forward. "I'm aware, Sergeant Major. 3 times I blocked your application." "Yes, Sergeant Major." "Do you know why?" "Concerns about my ability to handle pressure." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's what they told you. Truth is, I knew you'd outshoot every man here, and I didn't want to deal with the fallout." Alex's fingers twitched slightly on her rifle. "Then why now?" Hendricks studied her for a long moment. "Because 15 for 15 through Forest cover trumps tradition, politics, and my personal comfort. You've earned your place here. Now prove me right." He moved on. Alex's hands stilled. Her breathing evened. Another test. Another chance to let her results speak louder than the doubts of others. She loaded her rifle. The air smelled of gunpowder and sweat. Around her, the other candidates shifted, waiting for the command. She whispered so quiet no one else could hear. 1 shot, 1 kill. And when the command came, she didn't miss. Not once. Why did her hands tremble when no one was watching? Alex sat alone at the edge of the barracks, the Georgia humidity clinging to her skin. The advanced sniper course was only in its 2nd week, and already she felt the weight of eyes on her. Men didn't stare out of curiosity anymore. They stared out of calculation. They wanted to see her miss. They wanted to see her crack. She set her rifle across her knees, fingers running the length of the barrel like she was tracing scars. Every test, every drill, every round fired. Each one carried more than just technical weight. It carried her father's ghost. The night air pressed heavy around her, cicadas droning. She whispered into the dark, "I won't break, Dad, I can't." But still, her hands trembled when no one was watching. Day 3, the range. Targets shifted unpredictably, some silhouettes, some steel plates, some fleeting shadows designed to test reflexes. Each shooter was given 10 seconds per engagement. Fail once and you were behind. Fail twice and you were gone. One by one, rifles barked down the line. Some candidates cursed, some laughed nervously, some hit clean. When her turn came, silence spread. Even the instructors paused to watch. Alex inhaled. The rifle felt like an extension of her body. 10 seconds stretched, dilated, warped. The first target dropped, then the second. The third barely peaked before vanishing. She clipped it dead center. One after another, every shot found its mark. 9, 10, 11, 12. When the buzzer ended, every target lay shattered. No smile, no satisfaction. She simply cleared her weapon, set it down, and stepped back. Murmurs rose along the line. Hendricks barked for silence, but the whispers kept buzzing. Machine. Cold blood. Doesn't even breathe. Alex didn't meet their eyes. She didn't need their approval. She needed consistency. Because she knew what they didn't. On the battlefield, one miss could mean a folded flag handed to a mother. Later that week came the stress shoot. Candidates were run ragged, lungs burning, legs trembling, then thrown behind rifles to see if fatigue would fracture focus. Some men collapsed at their stations, unable to steady their sights. Alex dropped to prone, chest heaving. The world tilted, blurred. Sweat burned her eyes. But she remembered her father's voice. "The body lies, the mind sees truth. Trust the math, Alex, trust the math." She steadied, inhaled. The target's head snapped back. Shot after shot, she erased silhouettes from existence while others gasped and fumbled. When the course ended, her grouping was tighter than men who outweighed her by 50 pounds. Whispers followed her back to the barracks, not dismissive anymore, not mocking. Now the whispers carried something else. Fear. But with fear came rivalry. Corporal Mason Keene was 6'3", broad-shouldered, with the quiet arrogance of a man used to being the best. He had topped ranges for years, his scores untouchable. Until her. He confronted her after evening chow, cornering her by the bleachers where shadows stretched long. "You think you belong here because of Ravinia?" His voice was low, sharp. "You got lucky, that's all." Alex kept her tone even. 15 clean shots isn't luck. "You think that makes you better than the rest of us?" "No," her eyes locked on his. Calm, steady. "It makes me accountable. Every man who lived in Ravinia is a debt I carry, and every miss I don't allow myself to make is interest on that debt." Keene's jaw tightened. He leaned closer. "You won't last, I'll make sure of it." She didn't flinch. "If you're watching me that closely, Corporal, you'll miss your own shot." For a moment the air thickened between them. Then he spat in the dirt and walked off. Alex exhaled slowly. Rivalry she could handle, but resentment like his had a way of festering. Instructors tested more than marksmanship. They tested patience, endurance, the will to stay invisible in miserable conditions. One week the candidates were dropped in swamps with orders. Infiltrate a mock compound without being seen. Sensors tracked heat signatures. Motion detectors watched every angle. Most men were spotted within an hour. Some cursed as alarms blared. Some laughed nervously, accepting failure. Alex moved like the swamp itself. Slow, patient. Leeches clung to her legs, mud caked her face, but she didn't twitch. When at last she reached the perimeter, she lay unmoving for another 30 minutes, waiting, watching, calculating guard rotations down to the second. Only when the path aligned did she slip inside. She wasn't caught once. At dawn, when the instructors reviewed footage, they shook their heads in disbelief. She hadn't simply avoided detection. She had predicted the sensors, blind spots, before they even realized they existed. Even Hendricks muttered, almost grudgingly, "Ghost indeed." But skill didn't erase loneliness. At night the barracks echoed with laughter and camaraderie. Men bonded over failures, over scars, over stories they shared to ease the grind. Alex sat apart, polishing her rifle. They spoke around her, not with her. She had saved men in Ravinia, but here she was still an outsider. It wasn't cruelty, it wasn't malice. It was distance, a wall she had grown too used to. And some nights when the laughter was loudest, she slipped outside to the quiet range. There under the stars she practiced, not for approval, not for scores, but because the silence of the scope was the only place she felt at home. Still, even in silence, the tremor returned. The faint quiver in her hands when she thought too long, a ghost of her father's pistol, a ghost of the blood she had seen on his study wall. She pressed her palms into the rifle stock until the tremor stilled. "You won't own me," she whispered into the night. "Not now, not ever." Thousands of miles away, the shadow watched. He sat in a dimly lit safehouse, reports spread across the table. Surveillance photos, training schedules, snippets of intercepted chatter. Alexandra Winters was no longer just a name. Now she was a pattern, a rhythm, a pulse in the system. His lieutenant approached cautiously. "Our sources say she is excelling, top of her class." The shadow's lips curled. "Of course she is. Ghosts don't stumble in daylight, they drift, they vanish, they kill clean." The lieutenant shifted uneasily. "What do you want done?" The shadow traced his finger across Alex's photo. Her dark eyes stared back, calm, calculating. "Nothing yet. To kill her now would be waste. She must grow, rise, believe she is untouchable. Only then, when she has climbed high enough, will the fall destroy not just her, but the faith of everyone who believes in her." The lieutenant swallowed hard, and in the meantime, the shadow leaned closer to the photo. We learn, we wait, and when the moment comes, we make her doubt her own eyes. By the end of the course's second month, Alex's scores were unmatched. Her grouping at 1,000 meters was tighter than most could manage at half the distance. Her infiltration times shattered records. And yet one test remained: psychological resilience. Candidates were isolated, deprived of sleep, fed misinformation, pushed to question their instincts. The test wasn't about skill with a rifle. It was about whether the mind cracked under pressure. Alex sat alone in the windowless room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A screen flashed scenarios. Some were tactical, some were moral, some were impossible. Her father's voice whispered in memory, "The forest speaks, listen." But here there was no forest, only her own mind. One scenario asked, would you take a shot if it meant saving your team, but killing a child shielded in the crossfire? Her hand hovered, trembled, sweat beaded her brow. She closed her eyes, listened, not for answers, for truth. When she opened them, her finger pressed the button. The buzzer sounded, the screen went black. And for the first time since Ravinia, Alexandra Winters doubted herself. The instructors never told her if she passed, not directly. They didn't have to. The next morning, her name appeared at the top of the roster, number 1. But as she stared at it, she felt no victory, only weight, because the silence of that room lingered, because she knew there were choices no bullet could make clean. That night, alone again beneath the Georgia stars, she whispered, "You told me to see everything, Dad, but sometimes what I see isn't clarity, it's the cost." The wind carried her words away. The tremor in her hands returned. And still she didn't stop. Because ghosts don't stop, they move, they endure, they wait for the shot no one else can see. Why did the classroom feel more dangerous than the battlefield? Alex stood at the front of the lecture hall, 30 pairs of eyes locked on her. Operators from across branches, men who had fired thousands of rounds in combat zones, men who carried scars like armor. She had stared down enemies through a scope. She had walked unseen through swamps and shadows. But here, standing before hardened warriors, her chest tightened. Teaching was exposure. No ghillie suit, no rifle stock against her cheek, no silence to vanish into. Just her. And still her voice didn't shake. "Lesson 1, she said. Her tone was clear, measured. "Shooting is math, distance, wind, angle, but killing is discipline. It's not the trigger pull, it's the decision that comes before it. That's where you win or lose." She let the silence stretch. Some students leaned forward, others smirked, waiting to dismiss her. Her gaze swept the room, calm, even. "If you came here to learn how to be faster with your trigger, you're in the wrong place. I'll teach you how to see. Because if you don't see the field, if you don't read the silence, you'll miss the one thing that matters. And then," she let the words hang, "you'll bury your brothers." The smirks faded, the silence deepened. And for the first time, Alex felt something shift. Not approval, not acceptance, but attention. The weeks that followed tested her in new ways. On the range, she broke drills into fragments, forcing students to fire under pressure, under fatigue, under distraction. She corrected them not with lectures but with questions. What did you miss in the background? What moved when you weren't looking? What silence should have told you something? Slowly, grudgingly, they began to see her not as anomaly but as authority. One evening after a grueling session, a Marine corporal approached. His face was weathered, his tone respectful. "Ma'am," he said, "back in Kandahar I lost a friend to an ambush. We didn't see it coming. Today you showed me how we could have." Alex met his eyes. She didn't smile. "Then remember it. His death means nothing if you don't carry the lesson forward." The corporal nodded sharply. "Yes, ma'am." He walked away, but Alex stood there long after, the words echoing in her chest. His death means nothing if you don't carry the lesson forward. It was her father's voice. It was her own. Yet for every ounce of respect gained, doubt still lingered in shadows. Corporal Mason Keene, her old rival from sniper school, was now assigned under her instruction. His disdain hadn't dulled. During one live-fire exercise, he deliberately cut corners, exposing his position, firing sloppily. When the drill ended, Alex confronted him. "You rushed your shot." He shrugged. Target went down. "Barely. You would have given away your position, and in combat you'd be dead before the next trigger pull." He smirked. "Still scored the hit. Maybe you should worry less about perfection and more about results." Her voice cooled. "Perfection is results. You don't get second chances." He leaned in, his words a whisper meant only for her. "You think Ravinia makes you untouchable, but luck runs out. One day you'll miss. And when you do, no one will remember the 15 shots you made. They'll remember the one you didn't." Alex held his gaze. She didn't flinch, she didn't reply. Because part of her feared he was right. Far away in a safe house shrouded in smoke, the shadows studied his growing web. Maps, photos, schedules. Every movement Alex made was now logged. His lieutenant entered cautiously. "Her reputation spreads, even in whispers among our contacts. They call her Ghost. Some say she sees through trees, through silence itself." The shadow's lips curled. "Legends are the most fragile weapons, sharp when new, brittle when tested." He tapped her photo pinned at the center of the board. "She thrives on control, precision. If she begins to doubt her own eye, she collapses." The lieutenant hesitated. "Do we move?" "Not yet," the shadow said softly. "A sniper lives by patience, so will we. Let her grow, let her feel secure, and then we will bleed her where it hurts most. Not her life, her faith in herself." He leaned closer to the photo, his whisper almost intimate. "Ghosts vanish when you stop believing in them." Back at Fort Benning, Alex's days blurred into endless drills, lectures, evaluations. But the nights were different. At night alone, she replayed Ravinia in her head. Each shot, each kill, each body falling in the silence of the forest. The faces of the enemy blurred, but the sound remained. Not the crack of her rifle, the stillness after. 15 times silence answered. 15 times lives ended. Her students looked at her with reverence. The army looked at her with pride, but inside she felt the cost. Each shot carried weight, and weight never vanished, it only stacked. Some nights she pressed her palms hard against her temples, whispering, "You did what you had to. You saved them." But the ghosts never fully left. Respect, though, began to show in ways she hadn't expected. One afternoon, Hendricks, once her harshest gatekeeper, called her into his office. The man sat behind his desk, scarred hands folded. "You're harder on them than I ever was," he said. Alex braced for criticism. "They can't afford mistakes." His grizzled mouth twitched into something like a smile. "No, they can't, and they won't because of you." He leaned forward. "I blocked you 3 times, I doubted you, I was wrong. Ravinia proved it, but watching you here, watching you teach proved it more." Alex blinked. Hendricks didn't give compliments, not ever. "You've built something," he continued. "Respect not given to you but earned from them. That's rarer than talent, that's leadership." She straightened, words caught in her throat. At last she managed, "Thank you, Sergeant Major." He waved it off gruffly. "Don't thank me, just keep doing it. And don't let the bastards who doubt you break the steel you've forged." For the first time in years, Alex walked out of an office with her chest a little lighter. Still the tremor returned. Late one night she sat alone in the empty range, hands trembling on the stock of her rifle. She steadied her breathing, but the quiver stayed. It wasn't fear of failure. It wasn't fear of death. It was the pistol in her father's study. The silence after the gunshot. The truth she could never unsee. Every bullet she fired carried that silence inside it. And she knew, one day the silence might consume her. A month later, she was invited to a closed briefing at Fort Bragg, a mission. Colonel Foster was there, so was Carter and Hawkins. Intelligence has confirmed, Foster said, that Omar al-Farsi, known as the Shadow, survived Ravinia. He's regrouping, rebuilding, and he knows about you, Winters. The room chilled. Carter folded his arms. He'll come after her. It's how he works. Precision strikes, psychological warfare. If he knows she was the reason Ravinia failed, he won't let it go. Hawkins' voice was low, firm. Then we don't let him move first. We hunt him. Alex said nothing. Her heart hammered, but her face stayed still. Foster's eyes met hers. You up for this? She didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. Inside, though, she knew the truth. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a duel. Her father's ghost against the Shadow's malice. Her precision against his patience. And she could already feel the weight of it pressing against her chest. Why did the air feel heavier than the ground beneath her boots? Alex crouched low in the dark, the Afghan mountains stretching black and jagged under a moon cut thin as a blade. Her rifle lay steady across the rock, its glass sweeping the valley below. They weren't here to capture the Shadow tonight, not yet. The mission was smaller, at least that's what they told themselves. Disrupt a weapons convoy, interrogate a lieutenant who might know the Shadow's routes, hit hard, vanish fast. But Alex knew better. Every thread they pulled inched closer to the man himself, and the closer they drew, the heavier the air became. She whispered into her mic, convoy approaching, 3 vehicles, 10, maybe 12 fighters, RPG spotted. Hawkins' voice came back, calm but clipped. Copy, Ghost, hold eyes, we move on your mark. Her crosshairs drifted over the lead truck. She tracked the gunner standing tall, scanning the ridgeline with false confidence. He wouldn't see her. He never would. Her finger brushed the trigger. But she didn't fire, not yet. Something tugged at her, a faint echo in the night. Her father's voice carried in memory. Always ask who's watching you while you're watching them. She swept her scope left, then right, then higher along the ridges. For an instant, nothing. Then movement. A faint glint, not moonlight on stone, not natural. A scope, a reflection. Her breath hitched. Someone was watching her. Ghost, what's the holdup? Hawkins' voice snapped. Counter-sniper, she whispered. Her throat was dry. High ground, North Ridge. He's not with the convoy, he's hunting Overwatch. Silence crackled through the comms. Hawkins cursed under his breath. Shadow. Maybe, her pulse pounded, or one of his. Can you take him? Her jaw tightened. She shifted, slow as death, bringing her scope up toward the ridge. The glint vanished. Whoever it was had ducked away. No shot, she whispered. The convoy below rumbled closer, engines growling. The trap was seconds from springing. Ghost, mark us in. We move, Hawkins ordered. Alex's mind raced. She could keep her eyes on the convoy, or she could hunt the hunter, but not both. And that's when it struck her. That was the Shadow's play. Divide her. Force her to choose between protecting her team or protecting herself. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Decision. She dropped back to the convoy. Engage now. Her shot cracked. The lead gunner folded. Chaos erupted. Hawkins' men surged from cover, cutting down fighters in disciplined bursts. RPG fire streaked wild into the night, explosions shattering stone. But Alex's heart wasn't steady. She kept flicking her scope back to the ridge, searching, waiting. The ghost of a reflection never came back. The firefight ended in minutes. 3 trucks destroyed, 9 fighters dead, 2 prisoners on their knees, hands bound, eyes burning with hatred. Hawkins wiped blood from his cheek as he approached Alex's position. Clean, fast, textbook. She shook her head. Not textbook, he was there. Hawkins frowned, the shadow. I don't know, a sniper, watching me close enough to take the shot, but he didn't. Her voice dropped sharp with unease. He wanted me to know. Hawkins' jaw clenched. He looked back at the valley, then at her. Then we just confirmed what Intel guessed. You're not the hunter here, Winters. You're the prize. The words settled like stone in her chest. Back at Bagram, the interrogations began. The lieutenant they captured refused to speak, at least not to Hawkins, not to Carter. But when Alex entered the dim cell, his eyes lit with recognition. You, he spat, the woman from Ravinia, his lips curled, the ghost. Alex's face stayed still. Then you know what happens if you lie to me. The man laughed bitterly. Kill me, it makes no difference. The shadow is already watching you, every step, every breath. He says ghosts are just dead men waiting to realize it. Her pulse tightened. Where is he? The lieutenant leaned forward, chains rattling. Closer than you think. He said you'd come. He said you'd think you were hunting him, but you've been walking the path he left for you. Her breath caught, but she didn't show it. She leaned closer, her voice ice. Then tell your shadow this. When ghosts come, they don't ask permission. She stood, leaving him in the dark. But his laughter followed her down the hall, echoing in her chest long after she shut the door. That night, alone in her bunk, Alex couldn't sleep. The tremor was back in her hands, worse now. She kept replaying the ridge, the glint of the scope, the choice she made. Why didn't he take the shot? Why let her live? Unless... Her father's voice came again, quiet, relentless. Every hunter tests the prey first. He makes them run, makes them doubt. Then he waits until they exhaust themselves. That's when he kills. Her chest tightened. For the first time in years, fear, not calculation, dug its claws into her. Not fear of death. Fear of losing herself before the bullet ever came. A week later, the team hit another outpost. Intel said it was a weapons cache. Reality said it was bait. The outpost was too clean, too easy. Ammunition stacked neatly, vehicles untouched, fighters who surrendered faster than expected. Hawkins didn't like it, neither did Carter. But Alex felt it in her bones. The silence, too perfect, too staged. Her whisper cut through the comms. We're not hunting him, he's hunting us. And then the first shot rang out. Not hers. His. A seal went down, throat torn open before anyone heard the crack. Chaos, shouts, men diving for cover. Sniper, Hawkins roared. Alex's hands moved before her mind did. She crawled, rolled, set her rifle, glass sweeping across the ridges. There, a silhouette fleeting, the faintest shadow slipping between rocks. Her breath stilled, she fired. Miss. Her stomach dropped, she never missed. The figure was gone, vanished. Her hands trembled harder. She pressed them into the dirt, forcing herself steady. Talk to me, ghost, Hawkins shouted. He's moving, she hissed. Fast, he's playing angles, he's better than anyone we've faced. For the first time since Ravinia, doubt stabbed her clean. Because she knew the truth. She wasn't the only ghost anymore. They pulled out with 2 wounded, 1 dead, the first death under her watch. Alex sat in the transport, helmet in her lap, the world roaring around her. The SEAL who died, his name was Ramirez, a husband, a father of 2, he never saw the shot that killed him. And Alex never saw the bullet coming. Her chest clenched like a vice. She had sworn to protect them, to see what others didn't, and this time she hadn't. The tremor in her hands was so strong she nearly dropped her helmet. For the first time since her father's death, tears burned her eyes. Silent, angry, useless. She clenched her fists until her nails drew blood. Not again, she whispered, not again. But the silence that followed was the same silence she remembered at 16, the silence of failure, the silence of ghosts. Thousands of miles away, The shadow cleaned his rifle with patient precision. He replayed the firefight in his mind, the single kill, the missed shot from Winters. He smiled thinly. Now, he whispered, she knows what it feels like, to doubt, to falter, to bleed. He set the rifle down, staring at her photo pinned above his workbench. The first crack has appeared, and when a ghost cracks, they shatter. Why couldn't she stop hearing it? The shot, that single crack tearing through the Afghan night, the silence that followed. Ramirez's face haunted her. Not the moment of death, she hadn't seen that. What she saw over and over was his photo back at base, smiling, his kids tucked against his arms, his wife beside him. That photo was the shot she missed. Alex sat alone in the range after midnight, the Georgia air thick with sweat and smoke. Her rifle lay steady, her hands trembling so violently she had to lock her elbows into the mat to keep the scope from shaking. She pulled the trigger, the target splintered. She pulled again, another hit. And again and again. Perfect scores. Perfect groupings. But it didn't matter, because one shot, the only one that mattered, had missed. She dropped the rifle, breath ragged, pressing her palms to her face. For the first time since Ravinia, she whispered into the dark, maybe they were right, maybe I don't belong here. The silence answered. And somewhere, she imagined, the shadow was listening. Hawkins found her 3 days later in the gym. She was drenched in sweat, hands raw from climbing ropes until her palms tore. Winters, his voice carried that commander's edge but softer than usual. You've been killing yourself since Bagram. You can't outrun this. She wrapped her hands tighter around the rope, pulling herself higher. If I'd been faster. Stop, his tone snapped sharp. That's survivor's guilt talking. I've lived it. You can't change it. She dropped down, landing hard, chest heaving. She wiped sweat from her brow, refusing to meet his eyes. You don't get it, she whispered. I don't. Hawkins stepped closer, his limp still visible from Ravinia. I lost 3 men in Syria because of one mistake. I carried their faces for years, I still do. But listen to me, Winters. You saved 8 men in Ravinia. You've saved more since. If you let one death erase that, you let the shadow win before the fight even begins. His words cut deep, but Alex's voice cracked when she answered. Then why do I still hear it, that silence after the shot? Hawkins' face softened. He laid a hand on her shoulder. Because you're human, and if you ever stop hearing it, then you've lost more than a brother. You've lost yourself. She didn't reply, couldn't, but part of her wanted to believe him. 2 nights later it began. The shadow's whispers. At first they came as intercepted chatter, radio transmissions bouncing across mountains, mentioning her by name. Then came notes slipped into raids, names of her fallen comrades scrawled on walls before she even arrived. Then an envelope, delivered through secure channels, no return mark. Inside was a single photo. Ramirez's family, his wife, his children smiling. On the back in precise handwriting, 1 shot, 1 life, how many more? Her chest locked. She tore the photo in half, then into quarters, but the damage was done. The shadow wasn't just watching, he was inside her head now. She trained harder, longer, until exhaustion made her collapse at night. The tremor in her hands grew worse. She hid it under gloves, under discipline, under silence, but it was there. Her students noticed. One, a young Air Force sniper named Daniel, approached her after a session. "Ma'am," he said hesitantly, "you okay?" Her reply was too sharp. "Focus on your shot, Corporal. Don't waste time on mine." He flinched, nodded, and walked off. She regretted it instantly, but she said nothing. Because weakness couldn't be spoken. Not here, not now. The shadow's trap drew tighter. Another mission, another outpost. Intel said a supply hub, Alex's gut said otherwise. She scanned the ridgelines, every rock, every shadow. Nothing, no glint, no movement. And yet her chest tightened. They moved in, cleared the outpost. Empty, too empty. Then the explosions came. Mines hidden under crates. 3 men thrown, one screaming, one silent forever. Hawkins cursed into the comms. Pull back, it's rigged. Alex's hands shook as she covered their retreat, scope darting for threats. But there were none. No fighters, no ambush. Only silence. And she knew. The shadow wasn't trying to kill them all. Not yet. He was bleeding them, slowly, patiently, piece by piece. And each piece carved deeper into her. That night she sat in her bunk, staring at her rifle laid across her knees. She whispered to herself, voice raw, "You're losing, you're slipping. He's not just killing you in the field, he's killing you here." Her hands trembled so violently, she almost dropped the weapon. She pressed her palms against the stock, whispering harder, "Stop, stop, stop." The tremor eased, barely. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, fighting the weight crushing her chest. In the silence, her father's voice returned. "The forest speaks, but sometimes it lies, and if you listen too long, you'll believe the lies instead of the truth." Her eyes stung. She whispered, "Then tell me, Dad, what's true, what's real?" But silence answered, always silence. The next morning, Carter called her into a briefing. He laid satellite images across the table. Shadow's movements point north. Reports say he's gathering men again, bigger than before. This isn't harassment anymore, it's preparation. Hawkins leaned forward. He's baiting us, drawing us into his ground. Carter's eyes flicked to Alex. He's baiting her. The weight of that truth pressed down on the room. Foster finally spoke. "Winters, you have a choice. Step back and we send someone else. Stay in and you're his target. He wants you. He won't stop until one of you is dead." Her throat tightened. Her hands trembled under the table. But her voice was steady when she answered. "Then it ends with me, one way or another." The room fell silent. Because they all knew, this wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a reckoning. Later, Alex stood at the range again. Alone, always alone. She lined up her shot, the target blurring behind the glass as her hands trembled. She forced her breath slow, in, out, hold. The tremor eased, for one heartbeat. She squeezed, the target shattered. She closed her eyes. Not math, not physics, not skill. Faith. Faith that she could still trust her eye, her finger, herself. She whispered into the night, "You can bleed me, Shadow, you can make me doubt, but you won't take the shot I owe to my father, you won't take the ghost from me." The wind carried her words across the range, lost in the dark. But somewhere out there, in his own silence, the Shadow was waiting. And both of them knew. The next time scopes aligned, only one ghost would remain. Why was the silence louder than the war itself? The mountains were still. Cold wind whipped through jagged peaks, carrying dust and whispers. Alex lay prone, cheek pressed to the stock of her rifle, her eyes steady behind the scope. Below her, chaos churned. The Shadow's men clashed with Hawkins' team, gunfire ripping through stone and dust. Explosions shook the ground. Shouts cut short. The battlefield burned alive. And yet, inside her scope, there was only silence. Because she knew he was here. The Shadow, the sniper who had haunted her every step since Ravinia. The man who had studied her, tested her, broken her composure piece by piece. The man who had left Ramirez dead at her feet. This wasn't just battle anymore. It was a duel. Ghost against ghost. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Every hunter meets the thing he fears most, and when that day comes, you'll find out whether you're prey or predator." Her heart hammered once, then steadied. She whispered into her mic, "7 actual, cover your wounded. The Shadow's here. This fight doesn't end until one of us does." Hawkins' reply came ragged through the comms. "Ghost, don't take this alone." But she was already moving, sliding, crawling, vanishing into the rocks like smoke. The hunt began. For an hour, neither fired. They circled each other across the mountainside. Every time Alex thought she glimpsed movement, it vanished. Every time she shifted position, she felt eyes on her. Two predators, two mirrors, each waiting for the other to blink. Her breathing slowed, her mind sharpened. She replayed every lesson, every calculation, but beneath the math was something deeper. The silence of her father's study. The silence after Ramirez's death. The silence that had clawed at her hands, made them tremble, tried to convince her she wasn't enough. She whispered into the wind, "Not today." And then she saw it. A flicker, a shadow where none should be, half a glint gone in an instant. She moved without thinking, adjusting 3 clicks left, steadying her breath. But she didn't fire. Because something was wrong, too perfect, too staged. Her father's voice echoed again. Sometimes the forest lies. And in that moment she understood. The glint wasn't him, it was bait, a lure. The real shot was coming from the other side. Her body moved before her mind finished. She rolled left, dirt biting her face, and the crack thundered past, the rock where her head had been shattered into dust. Her heart slammed against her ribs. But she was alive. And now she knew where he was. The shadow was patient, ruthless. But so was she. For 30 minutes they traded silence, each repositioned, each calculating, each refusing to expose more than a breath. It wasn't bullets that killed in duels like this, it was doubt. And doubt was what he wanted from her. Another shot rang, this one closer, chipped stone carved her cheek. Her hands trembled, for a heartbeat her vision blurred. But then clarity. She remembered her father's words the very first time she had fired. Between heartbeats, Alex, that's when the world is still, that's when you see the truth. She pressed deeper into the dirt, felt her pulse slow, the tremor stilled. Through her glass she saw him. The shadow shifting between rocks, cloak blending with stone, his scope searching for her, patient, merciless. For the first time she saw his eyes, dark, focused, human. Not a ghost, not invincible. Just a man. Her finger tightened. The silence stretched. Her breath eased. Her heart slowed. Between beats, the world held still. She squeezed. The crack echoed across the mountains. His head snapped back, his rifle fell, his body slumped lifeless into dust. The silence that followed was different now, not heavy, not suffocating. Clean. When the shooting ended, Hawkins and his team found her still prone, staring down her scope. "Winters," Hawkins called softly. She exhaled, lowered the rifle, and finally looked up. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, but her eyes were steady. "It's done," she said. Her voice was almost a whisper. "He's gone." Hawkins studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. No words, because none were needed. They evacuated at dawn, the mountains painted gold. Alex sat at the edge of the transport, rifle across her knees, the wind tearing at her hair. She stared at the horizon, quiet, still. The others spoke in low tones about victory, about relief, about going home. But Alex didn't feel victory, not relief. She felt release. The weight of the shadow's eyes was gone. The duel was over. The ghosts were quieter, not silent, but quieter. And for the first time, she believed she could carry them without breaking. Weeks later, she stood again before her father's grave in Wyoming. The wind bent the grass, snow crowned the mountains. She placed another stone atop his headstone. Her hand lingered. "I finished it," she whispered. "The man who hunted you, the man who haunted me, he's gone." Her voice broke softly. "I almost lost myself, Dad. I almost believed the silence more than the truth, but I remembered what you taught me, to see, to wait, to trust, between heartbeats." She closed her eyes, a tear sliding free. "You were right, the mind is the weapon, And sometimes the hardest shot isn't the one you take with a rifle. It's the one you take against yourself. The one that says, I won't quit. I won't break. Her chest rose, fell. The wind carried her words into the endless plains. And for the first time she felt not peace, but something close. Back at Fort Bragg, she entered the lecture hall again. The same eyes watched her, but this time she didn't feel their weight. She began her lesson with the same words she always had. But her voice carried something new, something hard-earned. Lesson 1, shooting is math. Distance, wind, angle, but killing is discipline. The decision comes before the trigger, and sometimes, she paused, eyes sweeping the room, the hardest kill is doubt itself. The silence that followed was not dismissal, not skepticism. It was respect. She didn't smile, she didn't need to. Because ghosts don't brag, they don't speak loudly. They endure. That night she sat alone on the range, not to prove herself, not to chase away the tremor. Just to listen. The forest was quiet, the stars were sharp, her hands were still. She breathed in, breathed out. And in the silence, she understood what her father had tried to teach her all along. That dignity doesn't need words. That strength doesn't need applause. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And the world is changed because of it.